So we talk a little bit about Taanis Esther, since I assume everybody here, except for Pinsky, is fasting. And first of all, I think we're all aware that Taanis Esther is I think it's the most lenient of all fast days. Everyone's aware of that?
What?
Taanis Esther is the most lenient of all fast days. It's the most lenient is because what's its source? Well, when did it come about historically? Who's one of the first shitas to mention it? The Gemara doesn't mention it. Taanis Esther. The Gemara never mentions Taanis Esther.
Rambam.
No, before him. So Rav Chai Gaon. So that was one of the first people to bring down. There was a nihog of Bnei Yisrael to fast on Taanis Esther, but they never had a true Kabbalah. Versus, let's say, what other fast days had some type of Kabbalah? Tisha B'Av was a takana. So the other ones, the minor fasts, Tzom Gedalia, Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, Asar B'Teves, those there was some type of Kabbalah. There really was no normative.
What do you mean it's not Kabbalah? Everyone doesn't have it.
So it was not Mekabal in times of the Gemara. So it's called. The Ramah's lashon is, he says Taanis Zeh Eino Chova. It's the only time he uses that lashon by a fast day. He says this one's not a chova. So that's why we're much more makel about it. But the question is that what makes Taanis Esther different than all other Taanios? I think that's part of the reason why they're makel. What?
4 questions.
Of what? Like of Manishtana?
Yeah.
It's early for that. It's not Shloshim Yom. After Purim, you can ask that question.
Is Purim the 30th day or Shushan Purim the 30th day?
The third Shushan Purim. Well, it's right. Technically speaking, it's Shushan Purim. So I want to understand what makes Taanis Esther different. The other question is the easier question: why do we fast in Taanis Esther? Why do we fast in Taanis Esther? Everyone's fasting today, so I assume we all know why. Why? Zecher what?
Drinking for Esther. Major part.
Well, hold on. So that's the more known reason. It's an amazing thing. That's the known reason. So, the common reason given by people is that you're doing a Zecher le Esther. But it's a funny thing. I mean, look at the Mishnah Berurah. If you look at the original citing by Rav Achai, and then that travels through majority of actual poskim this way, the reason has nothing to do with Esther. What? Nope. No? The reason why is based on the halacha. But what? Rav Achai Gaon? There's a Gaon.
Or Rav Achai, but he's a Rav Achai.
Yeah, it's Rav Achai. So what's the reason why? It's a tough one. I feel bad, but it's there. It's based on a halacha, an actual halacha.
Is there like a mitzvah to fast before you go to war?
Bingo. There is a mitzvah to fast. It's a chiyuv. So there's a chiyuv to fast before you go fight. So the reason given by the majority of the Ron cites this as well. The reason given normally is that you're supposed to fast before you go to war. Right? So what are we fasting for? Mishnah Berurah brings that down. Exactly. Right, Mishnah Berurah brings that down. Right? So you're right about being zecher, but it's a funny thing. So what are we zecher? We're zecher the fact that they fasted before they go to war. So we're fasting for what? We're not going zecher that they fasted before they went to war.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have to explain what's that idea.
Well, they went to war for.
That's one side. But what the other side though is that it's zecher le Esther, what she fasted. In other words, of course, do we really do what she did?
No, because we don't fast.
No,
exactly. So
like the other half of the year.
What is the other half of the year? We don't have the dates right. And second of all, how many days should she fast? 3. So if anything, that's also a zecher because we're not doing what she did.
And we're not even doing this right time.
Exactly. Okay. So we have to understand what's a machlokes. There's obviously machlokes of what the reason why we fast, and what makes Taanis Esther different, and how do you understand each reason? Something different about the way Taanis Esther is structured than any other Taanis. But I don't. If I play like another card, that Analogy. What are you going to do? Look at the control. What's the control? Be a scientist. What's the control?
Yom Kippur.
Forget Yom Kippur. Let's take the other time. Let's take Tisha B'Av. All right. Use that as a control.
I mean, it starts on the day.
Forget that. That's true. But Tzom Gedalia doesn't.
No,
right.
Don't you need to give me goats and
What?
Don't you need to give me goats and the Taanis?
Don't you? What do the minor fast days have in common? Not just Beis Hamikdash, more so.
They're all based off tragedy.
Okay, good. Now, categorize that. They're based on tragedy. So
They're a way to make us sad.
Yeah.
Okay.
No
way.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm not so opposed to that. So So Johnny hit the right point, but let's just develop to that step that you got to. Let's just look at the two kinds of fast days. So one kind of fast day is Tisha B'av. Those types of fast days are always commemorating something that took, like a tragic event that took place, and so we commemorate that. We say we want to remember what the horrible event that took place. So we're commemorating an event. In other words, it's a historical event took place, and we're fasting to remember that event. That's one type of Taanis. What's the other type of Taanis that exists? We don't do it as often today, but they do in Eretz Yisrael on occasion.
Like for rain.
For rain, which means that right now there's a calamity. There's something taking place right now that demands Bnei Yisrael unite and be Misana. So, but Taanis Esther doesn't have either of those components. Because what are you doing? What was she fasting for? Right. Let's take the approach that she was fasting. That we're zeicher what she was fasting.
Yes, to get Hashem's help.
Saying the Gesher Kasher is a calamity
Right. She was fasting. We'll get to more specifics, but she was fasting to prepare. Right. And same with the Taanis before you go to war. So you automatically see the structure of the Taanis of Taanis Esther is different. Taanis Esther is a hechsher type of Taanis. It's to prepare you for something else. No other Taanis is like that. No other Taanis has that character. So that could be, this is speculation, but it could be I'm not saying that's why it is a minhag, but it could be that the structure of it is so different that it doesn't fit into the normal category of Taanis. No other Taanis is like that. No other Taanis that we do today exists that really is a preparation. Oh, so that's the case. So now, what's the machlokas? And how does that? What are we supposed to be thinking about today?
Focus in terms of what?
What is it? Is it Esther or is it
Esther.
Yeah, there's two ideas that are expressed in each way.
Esther.
Let me ask you a question. In other words, okay, great. So now it's very nice. It's preparatory. So are we supposed to think about going to war? We're not going to war tomorrow. I mean, the Netanyahu speech went. So getting back to this. So with putting Netanyahu's speech aside. So what's the machlokas here? What do you say? What's this? What's the objective of every Taanis? Tshuva. All right. So now we got to take into account the preparatory nature of this Taanis and how it's supposed to bring you into a state of tshuva and tefillah, etc. So how do we put those together? What are you supposed to be thinking about then? Pick a side. You want to think the Esther side? You want to think the Okay, great. Why? What was so important about her fasting? One second. When Mordechai challenges her, right, and says, "Listen, no, you gotta act now." So what does she immediately have to do? Look at how does the story unfold from Perek Hay through the ends? What happens? What do we see?
I don't know.
How does it unfold from the point where Esther gets dresses up nicely to see the king? What is now started at that point? Her plot, her plan. Okay, so what is she fasting for?
God to help her divide.
But when you prepare for something like that, what do you have to recognize? What do you have to recognize? Esther have to realize that no matter what plan. No, so what Avram Shlomo is saying happens to be correct, which is that when Esther was thinking of her plan, what she have to realize, she had to recognize that a plan can only go so far. And I think I mentioned this to some of you guys that you see that in after she accuses Haman, Ish Tzar B'Oyev Haman Harazeh, at that point in time, her plan ended. There was nothing more she could have done. And everything at that point in time was completely, so to speak, in God's hands. There was nothing she could have done at that point. And that's why you see Achashverosh, I'm not going to get into this now, but Achashverosh is very conflicted. Even though Achashverosh hears his accusation that Haman wants to kill his wife, he doesn't buy it. He leaves. He goes to take a smoke, goes outside. And then Chazal come in with all their famous midrashim that talk about the things that are out of his control that brought him back into the scene. But Achashverosh at that point in time, literally, that's the most tense point. The fate of the Jewish people hung in the balance. And there's no reason to assume that Achashverosh would have sided with Esther. There's no reason to assume that had to take place. What a false projection is. Let's understand. Let's look at the scene for a second. Okay, look at. It's amazing how the Megillah writes it. Right. So Achashverosh comes back into the room. So you have this famous Chazal. Now, what was Haman doing? Begging for his life, right? Yeah, so what is it?
On his knees,
so what?
Going begging.
Right, which if you were an observer of that situation, if you're one of the Sarisim, I don't want you to be Saris, but if you're one of the Sarisim standing on the outside, what are you going to say? Well, obviously, what's he doing? He's begging for his life. Now look at the way the Megillah writes it. It says Achashverosh enters, and it says literally as he's entering back in, the Haman nofel ala mita asher Esther alea. So Haman's it's almost like he's falling onto the bed. So any observer would have said at that moment in time, there's no question of what's Haman doing. He's pleading for his life. But what does Achashverosh see instead?
He's him trying to
Rape.
Hagam lichbosh. Well, it's what you killer or raper. But now think about it. Is that accusation? Is that a sane accusation? But what did he need? What did Achashverosh need more than anything else?
Sounds pretty.
Fact is that Achashverosh needed a false projection. He needed some way to resolve the conflict. So that's why he had to see it that way. Because I'll say, how did he fall? No, the Malach pushed him. He stumbled. In other words, it seems like he was going to plead and he tripped. But that's the point, though. But the point I'm trying to bring out is that Esther never could have foreseen that happening. It's impossible. This is where the plan ends, and the world of cause and effect that we have no knowledge of steps in. From message that we're supposed to keep in mind that just like, and it's an amazing thing. Like you're supposed to use Taanis Esther to prepare for Purim. The guys who were in my shiur yesterday. Let's start going back to the idea of drinking. Right? What do you see the Rishonim were so nervous about when it comes to drinking? Oh, you weren't there, right?
Forgetting the purpose of drinking.
No. What were they nervous about?
Forgetting the purpose of drinking.
No. Even a step before that. What's driving you? In other words, the Meiri writes, what drives you has to be Shevach HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you see that, but I think that's an idea in the holiday per se. Purim is a very interesting yom, but it requires a time of preparation that our mind's in the right place. So one area our mind has to be the right place in is to recognize that one of the main messages of Purim is the idea that as much as we plan, at the end of the day, the beauty of the story is how much was not in our control. That's one idea. So that you should have that in mind. That's one of the central ideas of Purim. What about the idea of preparation for battle? That's a more interesting one. What would you say about that? Well, what are we supposed to think about? Why do you fast before you go to battle in general? What's that idea? It's a very funny idea, by the way. You think about it, it's like an anti-military idea. In the military, you think you eat a big meal before you go to war. Here, you're fasting. But why would you fast before you go to war? It's a danger. Get in God's good side. Right? But what's more than that? It's got to be more specific. That you see, when you go to battle, when you fight war is also a very dangerous state. Right? What's dangerous about going to war? Forget the variables. I'm saying as a human being.
Death.
In war, a lot of emotions come about, right? Let's take the case by Haman. Okay, what do you think was the main emotion that would have driven the normal person in war?
What are you talking about?
And let's take the case by Haman. So now more than that. Now it's been the plot. 1 second, the plot's been revealed. So now, if you heard about this plot, why do you want to go out and fight against Haman? What is it in every Mechamas mitzvah? What is the objective in a Mechamas mitzvah? What's the objective in every Mechamas mitzvah? What's the objective? What is the objective?
And or defend.
No, that's a military objective. That's a Mechamas mitzvah. What's the mitzvah component? What is Kiddush Hashem? Kaddish Shemayim. That is the reason why we fight. What separates a regular battle, which is usually about conquering territory, etc., that could be a byproduct of it. But ultimately, we're there to that's why it's Mechamas mitzvah. We're there to Kaddish Shemayim. The thing is that in the battle with so before you go to war, you have to take out the bloodthirsty revenge elements, which is very natural. You have to get that out of your system and recognize you're fighting for one reason: Mekadosh Shemayim. That's why you see in the Torah, and when the Torah, for instance, even though we'll get to why it's machlokas later on, but in Parshas Matos, when Moshe Rabbeinu calls together the troops, who does he call? Who is in the army of the Jews? No, they can't be Kohanim.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Right. Chalutzei Tzava, who are who? No, the Chachamim. Well, yeah, the Chachamim. The people who fought the battles were always Chachamim. Why? Because it's such a dangerous state of mind to be in. And even with the Chachamim fighting the battles, what does the Torah still have to do? I'm not getting to shiras right now, but what does the Torah still have to? What does God accommodate? Well, famous halacha by Milchamas Mitzvah, by Kibush. No. What's one of the famous? War. I mean, that's a consolation because it recognizes in that state of war, a person's emotions are are very, very difficult to control. Also, if you notice I don't know if you guys noticed, by Kibush Aretz, the halachic system in many ways was suspended for the soldiers to the point where they could eat treif. Anything they found, they could eat. No shechita required.
Why?
Fine. That's a separate question. But they could. No. Now it's more of an issue of sakanas nefashos. That's different. Anyway, so I think the reason why it applies to us is that when we go, whereas the celebration of Purim is really is a victory celebration. Again, the guys who were in the shiur about drinking yesterday, that's one of the main themes. It's a victory celebration. But what are we really celebrating? We're not celebrating the bloodthirsty retribution that's described in the Megillah in and of itself. I mean, that's not what we're celebrating. We're celebrating the fact is we're Mekadosh Shemayim. So you have to prepare yourself for that. You have to recognize that when you go into Purim, that when we look at our enemies, we don't just have simplistic, cliches like he's evil or Amalek or things like that. We understand who our enemy is, and we understand the opportunity to annihilate Haman is not just simply avenging. What is it? It's really an opportunity to Mekadashim Shemayim. So if that idea is in mind, that's a great idea to have as you walk into Purim. So going back to the original point, what's Taanis Esther? It's a Taanis of Hachana. It's to spend the day getting yourself ready so when you enter into Purim, you have the right state of mind. No other Taanis has this quality to it.